The room laughed at the broken stranger. Then the quietest Omega in Cedar Ridge stepped forward and offered him her hand. Moonlight poured through the high windows of Moon Hall, turning the ancient stone floor silver beneath nearly 200 gathered wolves. Audrey Hayes stood near the end of the Omega line, hands folded carefully in front of her plain blue-gray dress, trying not to notice how easily everyone else seemed to belong. Noble families filled the raised seats. Young alphas whispered with confidence. Elders watched from beside the moon circle, where each public choice would begin. Audrey had expected to spend the evening invisible. Then the stranger walked in. He was tall, broad-shouldered, and dressed in a dark coat that had clearly seen better days. A pale scar traced the left side of his face. His dark brown hair fell untidily across his forehead, and a wooden cane supported his left side as he crossed the hall with a measured limp. No family colors marked his clothes. No servants followed him. More strangely, Audrey could barely sense a wolf scent from him at all. Elder Margaret Sloane studied the registry. Name. The stranger lifted his gray-silver eyes. Noah Mercer. Pack. A pause. None. The first laugh came from somewhere behind Audrey. Then another. By the time Margaret asked about land, rank, and family standing, the answer was the same each time. Nothing. Blake Harrington rose from the front row with a smile that made Audrey's stomach tighten. He was Cedar Ridge's future alpha, and he knew exactly how much the room wanted his approval. So you came to a mating ritual with no pack, no rank, and nothing to offer? Noah looked at him calmly. I came because the ritual was declared open to every unbonded wolf. Blake glanced at Noah's cane. Technically correct. Brave too. A few people laughed. Blake stepped closer and nudged the cane aside with the toe of his polished boot. It slid several feet across the stone. But perhaps you misunderstood what the women here are choosing. Silence spread for half a second. Then the laughter returned. Noah did not answer. Audrey watched his hand close slowly at his side. Not shaking. Not frightened. Controlled. That was what unsettled her. He looked less like a humiliated man than someone holding a door shut against a storm. None of the elders stopped Blake. No one offered Noah his cane. Audrey remembered something her mother used to tell her when she was small. You learn more about people by watching how they treat someone who cannot reward them. Before she could reconsider, Audrey stepped out of line. The laughter thinned. Blake turned. Audrey. She walked across the moon circle, picked up the cane, and stopped in front of Noah. She did not place it in his hand like he was helpless. She held it upright so he could take it himself. Noah's gaze moved from the cane to her face. He took it quietly. Audrey then extended her other hand. The entire hall seemed to stop breathing. Blake gave a short, disbelieving laugh. You actually want him? Audrey kept her eyes on Noah. I think he deserves to be asked. For the first time, something changed in the stranger's expression. Surprise. Real surprise. His silver-gray eyes seemed to brighten beneath the moonlight. Slowly, Noah reached for her. His fingers closed around hers. Warmth rushed through Audrey's palm and climbed straight to her chest. Her breath caught. Deep inside her, the wolf that had remained quiet for years suddenly lifted its head. One word moved through her with absolute clarity. Mate. Audrey almost pulled her hand away. Not because Noah frightened her, but because the word inside her had felt too clear to ignore. Mate. Her wolf had never spoken to her like that before. Across the moon circle, Noah seemed equally shaken, though he hit it faster. His fingers loosened around hers, giving her every chance to step back. She did not. That was when the whispers began. Of course she chose him, someone said. Who else would take her? A few Omegas laughed behind their hands. Blake Harrington did not bother hiding his amusement. He stepped closer to the circle, his polished boots clicking against the stone. This is almost perfect, he said. The forgotten Omega and the broken wanderer. Cedar Ridge may remember this ceremony for years. Audrey felt heat rise into her face, but she kept her shoulders straight. Noah turned slightly toward Blake. Something in his expression changed. It was small, cold, controlled. Yet Blake stopped smiling for half a breath before recovering. Elder Margaret Sloane struck the base of her staff against the floor. Enough. The room settled. She looked first at Audrey, then at Noah. A hand freely offered and freely accepted inside the moon circle invokes the three-moon courtship. Audrey had heard of the old custom, but she had never expected to stand inside it. Margaret continued. For 3 days and 3 nights, both wolves are protected from competing claims. They may speak, meet, and decide whether they wish to proceed toward a mate vow. Neither is bound. Neither is owned. Either may leave before the final vow. Noah looked at Audrey when Margaret said the last words. Not owned. Free to leave. Audrey noticed that he seemed relieved by that part. Margaret brought forward a narrow silver ribbon and tied it loosely around Audrey's wrist, then secured the matching end around Noah's. The ribbon was ceremonial, long enough that they could stand apart. It would be removed once they left the circle. Blake gave a humorless laugh. 3 days will not improve him. His gaze shifted to Audrey. And after those 3 days, do not expect respectable wolves to line up for what he leaves behind. The room went quiet again. Audrey had spent years swallowing comments because speaking back only made people look at her longer. Tonight something had changed. Perhaps it was Noah's hand. Perhaps it was the strange certainty still echoing inside her. She turned toward Blake. Then perhaps respectable wolves should learn what respect means. A soft sound moved through the crowd. Not laughter this time. Surprise. Blake's face hardened. Noah lowered his eyes for a moment, and Audrey realized he was hiding a smile. Elder Margaret dismissed them from the circle before Blake could answer. Outside Moon Hall, the night air felt cool against Audrey's cheeks. Pine-scented wind moved through the courtyard, carrying away some of the pressure that had filled the ceremony. Noah removed his half of the silver ribbon carefully and handed the loose end back to Audrey. You did not have to do that, he said. Neither did you. His eyes met hers. Do what? Let me answer for myself. For the first time, his guarded expression softened. You looked capable. Audrey glanced at his cane. I am beginning to think you are too. He went very still. Before either of them could say more, movement near the outer gate caught Audrey's attention. A man in black armor stood beneath the shadow of an old cedar tree. A silver emblem shaped like a crowned wolf gleamed briefly on his chest. He was watching Noah. Noah noticed him at the same moment. The armored man placed one fist over his heart. Then he bowed his head. Not casually. Formally. Noah's jaw tightened. The man straightened and disappeared through the gate. Audrey looked at Noah. Who was that? No one. The answer came too quickly. She studied him, the old coat, the worn cane, the calm silver eyes that suddenly refused to meet hers. Audrey had offered her hand because everyone else had judged him without knowing him. Now, standing beneath the moonlight with the courtship ribbon still around her wrist, she realized she did not know him either. And Noah Mercer had just told her his first lie. By sunrise, Audrey had decided on one thing. She would not let one lie erase the choice she had made, but she would not ignore it either. The silver courtship ribbon still circled her wrist when she left Cedar Ridge and followed the north road toward Noah Mercer's cabin. Morning mist clung to the pines, and the path narrowed as the village disappeared behind her. Noah walked beside her with the same measured limp, one hand resting on his wooden cane. He had not mentioned the armored man from the night before. Audrey had not asked again. Not yet. The cabin stood about 3 miles from Moon Hall, small and weathered, with a stone chimney and a narrow porch facing the trees. It was humble but not neglected. The roof had been repaired recently. Firewood was stacked with careful precision. A chipped blue cup sat beside the door as if someone actually lived there. Noah opened the door for her. You may stay here during the courtship if you wish. Audrey looked inside, then back at him. I will visit. I will not move in. Noah blinked. You do not trust me. I barely know you. A pause. Then he nodded. Fair. That answer surprised her more than an argument would have. Inside the cabin was plain. 1 table, 2 chairs, a narrow bed behind a curtain, a shelf of worn books. Nothing about it suggested wealth. Nothing suggested royalty either, though Audrey still remembered the soldier lowering his head. Noah started a fire, then tried to prepare breakfast. He burned the first piece of bread. Audrey watched him stare at it like it had personally betrayed him. You can stop pretending you know what you are doing, she said. His mouth shifted. I know what I am doing. Smoke curled from the pan. Audrey raised an eyebrow. For the first time, Noah laughed. It was quiet and brief but real. Later, she noticed a small bird near the porch with one wing hanging awkwardly. Noah crouched beside it before she could speak. His hands were careful as he lifted the frightened creature into a folded cloth. There was no impatience in him. No performance. Audrey showed him how to support the wing without causing more stress, and together they made a small box near the warm stove. "You have done this before," he said. "My mother was a healer." His expression softened. "Was?" Audrey looked at the bird instead of him. "She died 6 years ago. Fever season. She treated half the pack before she became sick herself. And they still treat you the way they did last night?" The question held something sharper than curiosity. Audrey folded the cloth around the bird. People remember what power looks like. They rarely remember what kindness costs. Noah went silent. The words seemed to reach somewhere deep inside him. By late morning, they walked back toward town so Audrey could report to the healing hall. The conversation came easier now. He asked about Herbs. She asked about the scar on his face. He said only that it came from an old fight. Another answer that was true enough to sound incomplete. They were nearing the first cottages when a shout broke across the road. A horse-drawn cart had slipped loose on the slope ahead. The driver pulled hard at the reins, but the horses were already running too fast. A young boy froze near the roadside, staring at the approaching cart. Audrey stopped breathing. "Noah!" He was beside her 1 second, gone the next. The wooden cane struck the dirt at Audrey's feet. Noah crossed the road with a speed that made no sense. He reached the boy, lifted him clear, then caught the reins near the horses and turned them toward an empty stretch of road. The cart slowed. The driver regained control. No one was hurt. Audrey barely noticed the relieved voices around them. She was staring at Noah. He stood nearly 30 feet away. Straight-backed. Balanced. Strong. Not a trace of a limp. Noah looked down at his own legs. Then across the road at Audrey. Between them, his wooden cane still lay untouched in the dust. Audrey did not pick up the cane. She stood beside it in the road, watching Noah walk back toward her without a limp. Around them, people were still calming the horses and praising the quick rescue, but their voices seemed far away. Noah stopped a few feet from her. His breathing was steady, too steady for a man who had just crossed nearly 30 feet in a heartbeat. Audrey looked from his face to the cane between them. "Your leg seems better." Noah followed her gaze. "It has good days." Audrey almost laughed, but there was nothing funny in the answer. That was not a good day. That was a miracle. His jaw tightened. He reached down, picked up the cane, and leaned on it again as if the last minute had never happened. Audrey watched him carefully. "Are you hiding because you are dangerous? Or because someone dangerous is looking for you?" That question changed something in his eyes. Surprise first, then something quieter. "Why would you ask that?" "Because most people would have used what you just did to impress everyone. You looked like you wished no one had seen it." Noah glanced toward the road behind them. "There are things about me that are complicated." "That is not an answer." "No," he met her eyes. "It is not." Audrey let the silence sit between them. She did not trust him, but she did not believe he wanted to hurt her either. That made the mystery worse. At the healing hall, she returned to work while Noah waited outside. The building smelled of dried sage, clean linen, and the faint sweetness of moonroot stored in sealed jars along the back wall. Audrey spent the afternoon sorting old remedy records left from her mother's time. She was carrying a stack toward the archive room when voices drifted through the half-open door near the storage wing. Blake Harrington was inside with Elder Silas Crow. Audrey stopped before they could see her. "The approved matches need to be finalized tonight," Blake said. Silas lowered his voice. "Several families are asking questions." "Then give them the same explanation as before. Compatibility records. Moon Circle tradition. Whatever keeps them satisfied." Audrey held the papers tighter. Approved matches. The phrase felt wrong. Mating choices were supposed to be voluntary. She heard Silas mention payments, then 3 women's names Audrey recognized from earlier ceremonies. Before she could hear more, footsteps approached from the other corridor. Audrey moved away and pretended to arrange supplies. Blake emerged moments later. His eyes paused on her. Still enjoying your courtship? Very much. His smile carried no warmth. Be careful, Audrey. Some mistakes become permanent. She watched him leave, unease settling deeper in her chest. That evening she walked back toward the cabin with Noah. At the forest stream they stopped to eat bread and apples beneath the pines. For a little while everything felt strangely simple. Noah listened when she spoke. He did not interrupt. He did not treat her like someone whose thoughts mattered less because she was an Omega. Then Audrey told him what she had overheard. His entire posture changed. What exactly did Blake say? She repeated the words. Approved matches. Payments. Compatibility records. Noah stared at the water. Whatever he was hiding, those words meant something to him. Audrey, stay away from those records. Why? Because if you are right, someone may not want you asking questions. She turned toward him. You do not get to warn me about danger while refusing to tell me what you know. Noah had no answer. That night, after Audrey returned from washing her hands at the stream, she saw light moving behind the cabin. She slowed. 4 men in black armor stood beneath the trees. The same crowned wolf emblem gleamed on their chests. Noah faced them without his cane. One by one, the men lowered to one knee. The tallest placed a fist over his heart. Noah raised one hand. The word died unfinished. Audrey stopped in the shadows. Noah Mercer was not a helpless wanderer. And whatever name those soldiers had almost called him, it was one powerful men were willing to kneel for. Audrey did not sleep much that night. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw 4 armed men lowering themselves before Noah as if he were someone they feared disappointing. By morning, one thought had settled into place. Whatever he was hiding, it was bigger than a bad leg and a false name. She left the cabin before breakfast and walked back toward the healing hall while mist still covered the north road. Noah followed a few minutes later, carrying the cane again. Audrey did not mention what she had seen. Not yet. She wanted facts before accusations. Inside the healing hall, she went straight to the archive shelves her mother had once used. The old records smelled of paper, herbs, and dust. Audrey searched for the name she had heard Blake and Elder Silas mention. The first woman had received a moonroot tonic 3 hours before her mating ceremony. So had the second, then the third. Audrey stopped. Moonroot was not forbidden. Healers use small amounts to calm scent overload during fever, panic, or recovery. But these records showed something different. Concentrated doses. Always before moon circle ceremonies. Always followed by unusual compatibility notes. Audrey pulled another register from the shelf. Her mother's handwriting appeared in the margins. Evelyn Hayes had questioned the same pattern years earlier. One sentence made Audrey's pulse quicken. Excess moonroot may alter scent perception temporarily. Cannot create a true mate bond. Audrey read it twice. Someone had not been creating destiny. They had been making ordinary wolves smell compatible long enough to influence a public decision. The door opened behind her. Noah stepped inside. His eyes moved from Audrey to the records spread across the table. You found something. My mother did first. She showed him the entries. Noah read in silence. The softness from the cabin vanished. He looked focused now. Precise. Familiar with danger in a way no poor wanderer should have been. Give me these records, he said. Audrey stared at him. Why? Because you should not be carrying them. That is not the same thing as answering me. Audrey. His voice stayed calm, but there was authority beneath it. This is bigger than you think. Then tell me how big. He looked toward the door. Not here. You said that yesterday without saying the words. She closed the register. You warned me away from the records. You already knew there was something to find. Noah was silent. That silence hurt more than she expected. Audrey had not demanded his entire past. She had only wanted enough truth to know the man she had chosen was real. Instead, every answer seemed to open another locked door. Do you know Blake is involved? She asked. Noah's eyes sharpened. I suspect it. Suspect it because of what? Because I came to Cedar Ridge looking for something. Audrey felt the room narrow around them. You came here on purpose. Yes. The ritual too? He hesitated. Yes. That answer changed everything. Audrey stepped back from the table. So you were never just a man who wandered into Moon Hall. Noah looked at her, and for one moment she thought he might finally tell her the truth. Then footsteps sounded in the hallway. He reached for his coat and turned toward the door. Something small slipped from the inner pocket and struck the floor. A dark metal signet rolled once before stopping near Audrey's shoe. She bent and picked it up. Obsidian. Heavy. Cold. On its face was a crowned wolf. Audrey had seen that symbol before on royal decrees displayed in the pack square. Slowly she looked up. Noah had gone completely still. His cane rested against the wall, forgotten. Audrey closed her fingers around the signet. Who are you? Noah did not reach for the signet. That frightened Audrey more than if he had tried to take it from her. He simply stood beside the archive table, straight-backed now, the forgotten cane leaning against the wall several feet away. The crowned wolf felt heavy in Audrey's palm. Who are you? She asked again. Noah looked toward the closed door, then back at her. My name is Noah Mercer, but that is not the whole truth. Audrey felt something cold settle beneath her ribs. That much is obvious. He drew a slow breath. I am not a lone wolf. I came to Cedar Ridge because I was investigating the mating records. For whom? He hesitated. People with authority beyond this pack. Audrey stared at him. The men in black armor? His expression changed. Barely. Enough. You saw them. I saw them kneel. Silence. Your leg is not injured. No, the cane. Part of the disguise. Audrey looked at the wooden stick against the wall. 2 days ago, she had defended that cane because she thought the room had used it to humiliate a man who could not defend himself. Now she understood that Noah had allowed every person in Moon Hall, including her, to believe something that was not true. Was the cabin real? Yes. The bird? Yes. The things you told me about yourself? Noah lowered his voice. Some of them. The answer hurt in a place Audrey had not expected him to reach. She set the signet on the table between them. And the way you looked at me? Noah did not answer quickly enough. Audrey gave a small nod. That is the only answer I needed. Audrey. You wanted to know what kind of people lived here. You wanted to know who would laugh at someone they thought was powerless. She glanced toward the cane. You let me become part of that test without telling me. I did not expect you to step forward. That does not make it better. His face tightened. No, this time he did not defend himself. It does not. Audrey looked down at the silver courtship ribbon around her wrist. The cloth had felt almost weightless the night before. Now it felt like something borrowed from a moment she no longer trusted. She untied it slowly. Noah took one step toward her. Audrey stepped back. He stopped immediately. That mattered. But it did not repair everything. She placed the ribbon beside the signet. You wanted to know whether someone could choose you without power. Did you ever wonder what it would feel like for that person to discover she had been studied instead of trusted? Noah's eyes dropped. I should have told you sooner. Yes. Audrey turned toward the door. He did not order her to stay. He did not follow. By late afternoon she was back inside the healing hall. Anger giving way to something clearer. Purpose. If Noah had come to Cedar Ridge because the mating records were being manipulated, then she wanted to know how far it went. She returned to her mother's files, compared names, dates, moon root doses, and compatibility notes. One missing reference appeared again and again. Main ledger. Elder Silas kept it with the official council records. Audrey knew the archive room beside the meeting chamber was usually unlocked before evening service. She found the ledger exactly where the old inventory list said it would be. Thick leather cover. Faded silver lettering. Her hands trembled as she opened it. Names filled the pages. Payments. Family agreements. Compatibility assignments written weeks before public ceremonies were held. Then Audrey reached the most recent entries. Her own name stopped her cold. Audrey Hayes. Beside it was a date for the current mating season. A notation followed in Elder Silas's handwriting. Approved match. Blake Harrington. Audrey stared at the page. Blake had not been angry because she embarrassed him. He had been angry because she had ruined a plan that had already decided her future without ever asking her. Audrey closed the ledger and held it against her chest as footsteps sounded outside the archive room. For one terrible second, she thought Elder Silas had returned. Instead, Elder Margaret Sloane appeared in the doorway. Her eyes moved from Audrey to the leather book in her hands. "You found it." Audrey stared at her. "You knew." Margaret's face tightened. "I knew something was wrong. I did not know how far it went." Before Audrey could answer, bells rang from Moon Hall. 3 slow strikes. Then 3 more. Emergency council. Margaret looked toward the courtyard. "Blake knows the ledger is missing." Audrey's fingers tightened around the cover. "Then I am taking it with me." Audrey listened carefully. "Once you enter that hall, they will accuse you of theft, interference with a mating ceremony, perhaps even conspiracy with Noah Mercer." Hearing his name still hurt. "Then they can accuse me where everyone can hear my answer." Margaret studied her for a long moment, then stepped aside. Moon Hall was already crowded when Audrey arrived. Word had spread quickly. Elders filled the raised seats. Pack families crowded the walls. Several Omegas from the previous ceremony stood near the back, confused and frightened. Blake waited inside the moon circle with his father, Alpha Grant Harrington, beside him. Elder Silas sat rigidly at the council table. Elder Judith Vane would not meet Audrey's eyes. Blake smiled when he saw the ledger. "There she is." Audrey walked forward alone. "Return council property," Silas ordered. "Not until these records are read." Murmurs moved through the room. Blake stepped closer. "You broke into restricted records because a stranger filled your head with accusations." "The records were not restricted when my mother worked in the healing hall." Audrey opened the ledger. "And the names inside are not accusations." Blake's smile faded. Audrey turned toward the gathered wolves. "Matches were approved before ceremonies happened. Families paid money. Moonroot was given before public compatibility readings." Silas stood. "That is an ignorant interpretation of medical records. My mother was a healer." Audrey's voice stayed steady. "She wrote that concentrated moonroot can alter scent perception for a few hours. It cannot create a true mate bond." Several Omegas began whispering. One young woman near the wall covered her mouth as Audrey read her name from the page. Blake's father rose. "Enough." His alpha presence pressed through the hall, but Audrey stayed where she was. Blake walked to the edge of the circle. "Give me the ledger, Audrey. Say Noah Mercer manipulated you into stealing it. Admit he deceived you, and this can end quietly." Audrey looked at him. "You already decided I belonged to you before I ever stepped into the moon circle." Blake's face hardened. "I offered you security. You offered yourself a choice and called it mine." The room went silent. Blake pointed toward the doors. "Noah Mercer has no pack, no standing, and no right to interfere in Cedar Ridge law. You chose a nobody over your own future." Audrey felt the fear then. Not because Blake was louder. Because she understood exactly how much power stood behind him. Noah was gone. Whatever authority he possessed, Audrey still did not know its name. No one had promised to save her. She looked toward the Omegas whose names filled the ledger. Then back at Blake. "No, one word. Clear. Final. I will not give this back so you can bury it." Silas ordered the pack guards forward. Before they reached the moon circle, the great doors opened. The soft tap of a wooden cane crossed the stone floor. Noah Mercer entered alone. Blake laughed. "You came back." Noah continued walking. Old coat. Scarred face. Measured limp. The same man everyone had mocked 3 nights earlier. Blake stepped toward him. "You should have stayed outside our territory." Noah stopped beside Audrey. His gray-silver eyes found hers for one brief moment, then shifted toward the council. Behind him, 6 figures entered in black armor. The crowned wolf gleamed across every chest. The tallest was the same commander Audrey had seen near the cabin. He walked 3 steps into Moon Hall, placed one fist over his heart, and lowered to one knee. The other guards followed. Blake's laughter disappeared. Alpha Grant stood frozen. Elder Margaret slowly bowed her head. The commander looked directly at Noah. "Your Majesty." Noah let the wooden cane fall from his hand. It struck the stone once. He straightened to his full height. Something immense rolled through Moon Hall. Not anger, not violence, but authority so absolute that alpha after alpha lowered their heads. Blake tried to remain standing. His confidence broke first. Then his knees touched the floor. Audrey did not move. Noah did not ask her to. He looked across the silent hall, then back at the woman still holding the ledger. The powerless stranger had vanished. King Nolan Mercer stood in his place. No one spoke for several seconds. King Nolan Mercer stood beside Audrey in the center of Moon Hall, and the silence around him felt heavier than any command. Blake remained on his knees. Elder Silas had gone pale. Even Alpha Grant Harrington seemed unable to decide where to look. Nolan did not begin with them. He looked at Audrey. Audrey Hayes did not know who I was. His voice carried through the hall without effort. She did not approach me for rank, wealth, or favor. She believed I was a lone wolf with nothing to offer. Audrey felt every eye turned toward her. Nolan continued. The deception was mine. A murmur moved through the room. Nolan faced the council. She did not steal these records for personal gain. She found evidence that should have been protected by the people sitting above her. Commander Caleb Stone stepped forward and placed a sealed folder on the moon altar. Nolan opened it. Inside were payment records, witness statements, and copies of correspondence gathered during the royal investigation. The names matched the ledger in Audrey's hands. Elder Silas Crow. Elder Judith Vane. Blake Harrington. Nolan turned one page. Moon root was used before selected ceremonies to alter scent perception. Families were told the results reflected natural compatibility. They did not. Several Omegas in the hall began to cry quietly. Others simply stared at the floor. Blake lifted his head. You cannot prove I forced anyone. Audrey looked at him. You did not need chains. You changed the information people trusted before they made their choice. That answer silenced him. Nolan nodded once, as if Audrey had said exactly what the investigation had been missing. He ordered Silas and Judith removed from council duties pending formal judgment. Blake was stripped of his authority as heir until the royal inquiry was complete. Alpha Grant was suspended from ceremonial oversight for allowing the system to continue without questioning what benefited his family. None of it happened with shouting. Nolan simply spoke, and for the first time Audrey understood what real power looked like when it did not need to prove itself. Then Nolan turned back to her. A guard brought forward his royal cloak and crown, but Nolan did not put them on. Instead, he lifted the crown and set it carefully on the moon altar. Then he removed the dark cloak from his shoulders and placed it beside the crown. He stepped into the moon circle wearing the same plain shirt Audrey had seen at the cabin. 3 nights ago, he said, you offered your hand to a man everyone believed was powerless. Audrey's throat tightened. I answered your kindness with a lie. He did not explain it away. He did not mention duty. He did not blame the investigation. I should have trusted you sooner. Nolan looked toward Elder Margaret. End the 3-moon courtship. Margaret hesitated only a moment before stepping forward. She untied the remaining ceremonial record ribbon from the altar post and spoke the formal release. By mutual law and royal witness, Audrey Hayes is free of obligation. Nolan looked at Audrey again. If you walk out of this hall, no one will stop you. Not Cedar Ridge. Not the council. Not me. Audrey felt something inside her loosen. Not forgiveness. Not yet. Freedom. Nolan extended his hand. The same hand she had taken when the room believed he had nothing. If anything between us was real, he said quietly, I would like the chance to earn your trust without a disguise. Audrey stared at his open palm. Her wolf stirred, but this time Audrey did not let instinct decide for her. She stepped closer. Nolan's eyes filled with hope. Then Audrey walked past his hand. She crossed the moon circle, past the crown, and continued toward the doors. Nolan did not follow. At the threshold, Audrey stopped for one breath, knowing the entire hall was waiting for her to turn around. She did not. Not tonight. Behind her stood a king who could command every wolf in the room. For the first time, he would have to learn what it meant to wait for one woman to choose him freely. 3 weeks passed before Audrey saw Nolan again. In that time he kept every promise he had made in Moon Hall. He sent no gifts, no summons, no royal invitation asking her to reconsider. Instead, new orders arrived across the Northern Territories. Every mating ceremony would now require separate consent from both participants. Moonroot could no longer be used before compatibility readings without an independent healer present. Any Omega who believed a previous match had been manipulated could request a formal review. Audrey was invited to help design those protections, not as the king's chosen woman, but as Evelyn Hayes's daughter and a healer who had uncovered the truth. That distinction mattered to her. Blake Harrington lost his position as heir while the Royal Council completed its investigation. Elder Silas Crow and Elder Judith Vane were permanently removed from ceremonial authority. Alpha Grant Harrington was stripped of oversight privileges for allowing a system he benefited from to continue without challenge. Cedar Ridge changed slowly after that, but it changed. One quiet afternoon, Audrey found herself walking the North Road again. The cabin appeared between the pines exactly as she remembered it. Smoke curled from the chimney. Nolan stood on the porch repairing the loose door hinge. No guards. No crown. No royal cloak. He saw her and stopped. For several seconds neither moved. "Why are you here?" Audrey asked. Nolan glanced toward the cabin. "Because this was the only place where you knew part of me before you knew the king." Audrey stepped inside. The little bird they had helped was gone, its box empty beside the stove. Then she noticed the wooden cane resting near the fireplace. "You kept it." Nolan followed her gaze. "I did." "Why?" His expression softened. "Because it reminds me of the worst thing I did, and the best thing that happened to me on the same night." Audrey waited. "The worst was lying to you," he said. "The best was watching you offer your hand when you believed I had nothing." There was no speech about destiny. No command hidden inside an apology. Audrey realized that was why she had come. "If we try again, there are no tests." "Agreed." "No secrets because you think you are protecting me." "Agreed." "And you do not make choices for me simply because you can." Nolan nodded. "Never again." Audrey looked at him for a long moment. Then she stepped closer and held out her hand. Nolan stared at it as if it were more precious than any crown he had ever worn. "May I?" he asked. Audrey smiled. "You may." He took her hand. This time the warmth that moved between them felt different. Not like fate making a decision for them, like two people finally making one together. 1 year later, Audrey returned to the Moon Circle in Cedar Ridge. She had helped establish Moon Haven, an independent refuge and healing center for Omegas seeking protection, recovery, or a second chance after unfair bonds. Nolan waited beside the moon altar without a disguise and without his crown. When he offered his hand, Audrey laughed softly. "Again." Nolan smiled. "Every day if you will let me." She placed her hand in his, and before their families, their pack, and the people whose lives they had helped change, they freely spoke the mate vow they had once been denied the chance to choose honestly. Power may impress people, but respect is what makes love worth trusting. I believe real strength is shown when someone gives another person the freedom to choose, even when the answer might hurt. What would you have done in Audrey's place? Share your thoughts below and subscribe for more stories about courage, dignity, and second chances.